really enjoy kicking off the Christmas celebration with the genealogy of Jesus for the sake of getting to watch everyone shift uncomfortably in the pews as the lists go on and on and on. And there's that part of us that hears it and wants to say, okay, can we get on to the narrative? Can we get on to the Christmas story? And yet why? Not only why does the church pick this to begin the celebration of Christmas, of course, throughout the span from today at the Vigil Mass, the Mass tonight at midnight, tomorrow at dawn, in the daytime, there's 4 sets of readings, 4 Mass formularies because Christmas is so big. Why does the church start off on that foot? More importantly, why does the entire New Testament start off on that foot with the Gospel of Matthew? Now, I could sit here and try to unpack that a bit more, why it was so important to Matthew. Why, as a particularly Jewish gospel, this lineage was so important for spelling out who Jesus was, the fulfillment of every promise. Why it even ended with this interesting legal claim that we end with Joseph, and then Jesus, even though we say, wait, but Jesus wasn't really of the flesh of Joseph. There's so many questions and important answers. But for today's sake, that's not where I want to turn. Instead, I want to look at this at a much more fundamental level. And that's because regardless of Matthew's intentions, genealogy is not something unique to this one passage, but throughout the scriptures. In fact, even that beginning, it says the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham, harkens back to the book of Genesis when we hear the lineage of Adam. We hear lines of kings in the books of Chronicles. Even the Gospel of Luke gives a lineage. Now, we in a society where people move so much perhaps don't appreciate this to the same extent as people of different cultures, different times in history. But the story of where we come from is not only important, but it's critical at the heart of the mystery we celebrate today. And so, this is unusual, I know, for me when I'm preaching, but I want to turn a little interactive here and start with a very fundamental question. These are all just a simple raise of hands. First of all, I'll start you off really easy so you can stretch the brain muscle. How many people here come from a family? Okay. If someone didn't put their hand up next to you, wake them up. Everyone comes from a family. Let's see. How many people were born in Houston? How many people came to Houston from somewhere else? How many people in their immediate or related family within the last couple of generations come from a different country? How many have ties to Latin America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica? Okay, good. Still checking you. How many people within your family tree have 2 or more of those continents represented? How many people your family looked a lot different once you got married? How many people in your family tree have some really weird people? Okay. By the way, my hand can be up on all those as well. So that's just a random sampling, not of your genealogy. We're not like turning to those sample services who tell you that like somehow your ancestor was a velociraptor, a million years ago. I don't know how much we trust those services, but some people are really into genealogy, others aren't. But we just in a very simple way saw the great swath just in this place in Houston, Texas on December 24th of 2022, the broad swath in this place and time of the human family. I can look at my own family tree and say from two sides, interestingly enough, my primary blood on both sides of the family both come from Germany, but way removed. On my mother's side, her family were the first settlers of the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. My dad's side, not quite so definitely colorful, I guess you could say, but nothing historical of that imprint. But German blood on both sides, with some sprinkled in English blood and Irish blood. And like so many of you, this mixed bag that all I can inherit, and look at all of the wonderful and colorful and frustrating figures of the family tree, and somehow that has had an impact on me today, as your stories have for you. And so when we hear this story of the genealogy of Jesus, we are getting the story of a human family. We're getting the story of Jesus as a descendant of Abraham, of David, all the way back to Adam. We get traced through a line of kings, some of which were great. There's some heroes that Deacon Lynn named there. There were some real stinkers that he named there. There were some people we just say, who's that? They must have been boring. And yet, interwoven through all of that is a story of salvation. We could easily say, well, for one people, the Jewish people, yes. But then, even amongst that, we have interwoven some Gentiles. The gospel writer weaves in the story of those 4 women, foreigners who enter the story through various ways. And if you know the stories of those 4 women, they themselves are some colorful characters with checkered pasts. And yet, each of them intervenes, comes in to this family tree, all of them bringing the story of nations, of a human story from the beginning to culminate with the birth of Jesus Christ in the flesh. This moment when we hear not just the story of Jesus' family, but our own. We hear the story, as I said, of heroic, villainous, outright boring individuals. We hear the stories of Jews and Gentiles, men and women. All of them contribute to the line of this God King who is born to us this day. Jesus does not just descend from the heavens, but comes forth from a human family. But I pointed out before the interesting dynamic of marriage involved. And that's why I wanted to make sure to ask you all that question. How many of your family trees suddenly got looking very different because of marriage? We can look at these individuals who intermarried with the line that we heard, but in fact, the most powerful marriage is told at the very end of that story of Jesus Christ born in the flesh. The prophet Isaiah, as we heard in the first reading, and if we've been listening carefully for all of Advent, has been telling us the story of how the story of God and his bride. His bride, the people of Israel, his bride, the church. God wedded to his people. And when we had strayed, when he sought us out and we ran away, God comes and weds his family, the family of the Holy Trinity. The family of God is wedded to ours as Jesus takes upon our flesh, our nature. No longer is ours just one story, but we are forever changed in our family tree as God's family becomes our family. As we become sons and daughters of God, just as husband and wife become one flesh, God has wedded heaven and earth in the birth of his Son. And so this story, while seemingly dry, is an incredible story. a great mystery of importance to all of us, but it also reminds us of two very important things this Christmas. Number one, God draws straight with crooked lines. I wonder how many people who lived in the time of some of those rotten kings who we just named were thinking, wow, I see God's fingerprints all over this guy. Oh, that person over there who's, suppressing his people or having affairs left and right, or, whatever it can be, the Lord histories of all the people, all the sins under the sun captured in these people in this family tree. People probably weren't saying, wow, I can really see God at work here. And yet from this story, salvation is born. All too often, we don't see the fingerprints of God on our own story. If we look around at our own challenges, our sufferings, the things that happen day to day, and we say, where is God in all of this? And yet, salvation is at work. And in the same time, we don't always appreciate God's sense of timing. Many of those generations could not see that God was at work, piece by piece, person by person, building block by building block, working out the story of salvation for each and every one of us. And all too often we wonder the same: when will God answer? Where is God? When is God in all of this? But to paraphrase, and I say paraphrase, I'm not quoting directly, the early church father Origen, this mystery we celebrate is when heaven invades earth, when eternity invades our time, and God reveals that his finger, his hand, has been on it all along. His hand is with each and every one of us all along. And so, when we celebrate the birth of a child, the one named Jesus who saves his people from his sins, the one prophesied as Emmanuel, God with us, we pray that we can truly begin to comprehend that mystery, that God is with us. Even in those times when we don't see it, those times when we don't understand his timing, God is with us and holds all creation, all time, every matter of our lives in the palm of his hand. For he has come to his beloved bride. He has wedded himself to us in an unbreakable bond, and he will now never leave us. Merry Christmas.